Hello, I'm Chris Baresh, pastor of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church here in Payless Heights. As a pastor, I get to encounter all types of different agencies and organizations that are doing some amazing work in the Payless community. And as we support them, one of the things that we continually hear is that they wish that more people knew of the services that they provided, because they are so life-giving and many people are benefiting from them. But many more could. Maybe even you or somebody you love. So that's the point of our program here, Community Bridge. And today, I am pleased to be able to welcome Erin Molek from Beds Plus. Erin, great
Hello.
to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, share a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Erin Molek, and I grew up in the city of Chicago. And I started working at Beds about 8 to 10 years ago when there were some misconceptions in the neighborhood where I was raised, and I felt I was raising my children, and I felt that I needed to kind of set an example. So I got involved, and those misconceptions were about homeless people. And be careful what you volunteer for. So I started volunteering with the organization, which is Beds, and tried to set an example for my kids about getting involved and making a difference where you live.
Fantastic. So you started out with Beds Plus as a volunteer.
Yes, I did. Yes,
and
I
that
did.
was 10 years ago?
Yes, it was 10 years ago.
And since then, you've progressed into now being a staff member. And what's your current position?
I am the development manager at Beds Plus, and I began, as you said, as a volunteer, and I helped manage the shelters, but my background was more a little bit in the development area and as a creative and working with our events and fundraising. And getting the word out, really spreading the word about what we do. And being a community member, it felt important to me to get out there and let people know the work that we were doing.
Great. Well, speaking of getting the word out, what is the mission of Beds Plus? What is it that you want people to know about Beds Plus, how it originated, and what it's there to serve and provide for the community? So
it's such a grassroots, wonderful organization that started over 35 years ago with a group of concerned individuals in our community that saw a need to help homeless individuals. And instead of not doing anything, they got together with a consortium of ecumenical groups and churches, and they got together and created a shelter program. And this program then kept evolving as, okay, we love the shelter program. It's 7 nights a week. It's during the cold months, but then they found that was a Band-Aid, and they started doing things like the day center and case management and trying to get people out of those situations of housing. So now we've really evolved to, we're not just a shelter. We try to prevent homelessness from happening. We house and rehouse people, and we are part of that safety net in the community that works with many, many organizations to stabilize people who are going through some sort of hardship or crisis in their life, whether it's housing, fleeing domestic violence situation and stabilizing them, to job security and helping someone with employment, mental health issues as well, and then just really working as part of just one little piece of the puzzle in the southwest suburbs to tie people to services.
Fantastic. So one of the things that you shared in your story is that there was a lot of misconception around homelessness based off of where you grew up, and it inspired you to get involved. What are some of the misconceptions that you would want to make sure other people are aware of when we speak of what it is to be homeless or addressing the issue of homelessness?
I think there are so many levels of misconceptions about homelessness, particularly that they're not employed. They have substance abuse issues. Many people who find themselves homeless have struggled with 3 to 5 stressors in life, and what those are hardships or crisis. And it's always, when I go to kids at schools, I always kind of tell them it's like that awful no good bad day you're having, but you just keep having it over and over and over and over again. So it can be loss of job, it can be you get sick so you lose your job, you have a family breakdown in your family, you have a mental health episode and you don't have resources or services that do that, and it can all just filter out into many of those things. And we have found over the years that we used to have clients come to us and who did have substance abuse issues or employment issues, and we would say, okay, 12 years ago there was this model, prior to that, let's get you stable, let's get you into some sort of a treatment program. Let's get you employed. But how can you even succeed in that if you don't have a roof over your head? So I think those misconceptions really have triggered this Housing First program, where we get you housed and stabilized first over many years. But I think that also the misconceptions are people are homeless if they really aren't paying rent, if they're couch surfing, if they're tripled and doubled up with family, if you have multi-generational living. And that also taxes systems exponentially. So if I had an issue and I move in with my parents in an apartment and I bring my 2 or 3 kids with me and the landlord finds out, well, there goes that living situation. Those people can also get evicted. So there's many, many reasons why, even if you have a support system, those can falter, or people who have been raised in generational poverty or in poverty can't get out of that cycle. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do, is to break that cycle with a lot of our clients.
Yeah, that really addresses some of the misconceptions or stigmas around what it is to be homeless, because you think, well, that's the person that's living in the forest preserve, or that's somebody that's standing on the corner all day and living there all night, when really it extends to situations well beyond that, people that we probably even know or encounter on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I back to when I go to present at schools, I often say, you could be in a classroom and anyone in this classroom with you can be struggling with housing insecurity at this point in their life, or homelessness. And that could be if they're staying in a motel as well, people living in cars, which is very unfortunate, especially as the cold months are here. So a lot of those other things that we have so many clients who were used to be at the old time shelters, where they would travel from shelter to shelter 7 nights a week, who would have signs up that they're employed. Please wake me up at 2 a.m. I have to work. Please let me in at 11 p.m. because I work in an industry where I work late. So many of the clients are employed, and they've had some hardship or crisis, breakdown in family, even sometimes just finding that apartment, elusive apartment that they can afford.
So one of the things about homelessness is we think, well, they just go to a shelter every night and then that meets their needs, and then they go out and find, a place to stay warm or to get services during the course of the day. How is it that Beds Plus is different than just that, just giving you a place to stay overnight?
Well, again, that goes back to that Band-Aid method. We just keep evolving and progressing. The more we learn and the more that society learns about the root causes of homelessness. And we want to prevent that from happening. So a big part of what we provide now is prevention and stabilization. So for us to prevent someone from losing their home, then possibly, like if they work from home, losing their job, losing that stability, the trauma of homelessness for a family, really per average family and household is about a $4,000, $4,500 expense to keep someone housed. The cost once someone is evicted to that family, to the resources in the community, to the system, to the shelter program, is about $135,000 to $150,000 to rehouse someone. It's astronomical.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's just like on our medical system, you name it. So prevention is key for us. And also, we meet people through that shelter program. But what we really want to do is prevent them from being there. And then once we do meet them, is to quickly try to bridge that gap and get them into housing and stabilization as soon as possible. So we have housing programs that are very specific and tailored to each client's need. We have an aging wellness program for the aging homeless program for our aging homeless. We have a family bridge program for families. We have domestic violence programs. You name it. We've really tailored our programs because one size doesn't really fit all when someone's struggling with housing.
Fantastic. So another issue that I know comes up is, as we put in all these compounding variables, is medical well-being. A lot of individuals that are homeless have some type of issue medically that needs to be treated and taken care of that requires care outside of just a shelter for the night or so. What does Beds Plus do to address that issue?
I think there's two really big parts to that story, and what we learned during COVID. really kind of opened our eyes that when people were at risk and we needed to keep them safe and out of the lockdown shelter and put them in these motel-based shelters, we realized that 68 to 70% of the individuals we serve were struggling from some sort of health condition, debilitating. So it could be, diabetes, it could be, blood pressure, high cholesterol, and some of them had pretty severe injuries. And what we found there was that walking from shelter to shelter, or getting there from bus to bus was just not in the best interest of serving that population. And we revamped that, and now that's a big trend right now with many of the shelter and homeless programs is this motel-based shelter. It's a more stable environment, it's one place, it's a place where we can engage with them and with services and provide that ability to get to that stabilization, that housing point where they can get employment, medical needs, and then they're not taxing our medical system. One client in particular was at that time visiting, had really struggled getting to and from the shelters. And he was going in and out of the ER weekly. And now I think he visits a doctor regularly every 3 months to 6 months. So you could see right there the cost effectiveness. And secondly, we found that we had clients coming in to our program who had severe medical issues, broke a leg, had back surgery, and to sleep on a pad and heal with some dignity on a floor was just not going to happen. They weren't going to heal. They weren't going to get better. They weren't going to stabilize. So we developed this, the Linda Sokol Francis Medical Respite Center that's now open in Summit. And we could talk a little bit more about that, because I know you visited with us. Yeah.
I did visit there, and yeah, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that center and what it provides for the community that you're striving to serve.
So the Medical Respite Center was like this brainchild of our executive director, Tina, and members of the community, and we partnered with them, and it was Dr. Sawyer. We have a residency program through Advent Hospital System, and what happened was they were seeing this, and the residents would come in once every 2 weeks, and they would see these severe cases, and they would whisk them off into medical care at the hospital. And then also we work with Pillars and other organizations in Loyola Nurses Association, nursing students, and we saw that these people were never going to get better. So they came up with a place where people could go specifically from exit out of any of the emergency rooms or the hospital systems in our area, our catchment area, and they can go there and heal, have access to services, have access to a on-staff nurse, and have help with medications, have help getting to and from appointments, whether it's mental health or physical health, and get back on their feet. And we house about 18 to 20 at any given time. And then we also partner with other agencies in the community, not just our emergency rooms and our hospitals, but also with organizations like Heinz VA to make sure that individuals that might be of service, and individuals who are homeless that kind of slip through those cracks, those veterans that often we find out in the streets who do, we are there to access and be available to them as well.
Fantastic. So you're kind of on the front lines of all of this, and then helping people discern and find services.
Correct. And that's like, I can't speak enough to this, being part of this safety net in the south suburbs, that we all coordinate and work together to provide, so we're not doubling the work, really providing more services, more opportunities for people to, reach that independence, reach that stability in their life after going through such a hardship. And, I always like telling the stories of how so many of our clients, once they're housed, and they've gone through quite a deal, being homeless and the trauma of homelessness, when we house them, pretty much standardly, when I've been there, they say how blessed they are and how lucky they are. And that's still, to have that positive outlook after going through something like that, has always been very heartwarming to me. And, yeah.
Fantastic. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was the transition to the motel-based shelter structure. So, what happened before, and what's kind of the direction things are moving in? What should we be aware of that we're looking for in regards to providing overnight housing for those in threatened with homelessness during these winter months as the weather changes and things get very cold?
So what has kind of been the trend or the eye-opener during COVID that many agencies like ours, like Beds, have seen is to kind of restructure into a motel-based shelter. So many organizations are purchasing and using a motel that was not in disuse and not used, and reinventing it to become more like a shelter-based program. So we are very lucky to be part of a state program, a pilot program, where for the next 2 years we will be providing that kind of opportunity for individuals. And usually on any given night we could maybe shelter on the regular shelter, we could shelter maybe 70 to 80 individuals, and at this point now we're prepared to house almost 200 individuals an evening and families in this program. And what that allows us to do is to really engage with people where they're at on any given day, and meet them where their needs are at, and engage in services at this motel-based shelter. And of course, with that, we just kicked that off mid-October. But we still need people to help us. We're a very, very deeply embedded in the communities that we serve, and our volunteers are vital to us. And without their support working at this shelter, without their help at the Summit Service Center, we can't do what we do. And they're also part of that community that our clients look for. One of the other eye-openers during COVID was the isolation, meant for everyone, but particularly for people who are going through tough times being in that motel room by themselves. So we still now are bringing that out into a community-based dinner program where every evening the clients can come for dinner or for lunch. They sit down with volunteers. Our volunteers don't treat them as equals, and sit down and talk with them and become their friends, learn about their lives, and vice versa. And really that element is really something that we're glad to really keep going. But we need volunteers to do it, of course.
Beautiful. So speaking of volunteers, what are some of the areas, say for instance, there's some people that very much like to get involved hands-on and face-to-face with clients, others that might be a little bit more reserved or have some reservations around doing that. What are some of the different volunteer opportunities that are available through Beds Plus?
Well, I think our most, what's on the forefront of our needs is this new facility that is open that is acting as our emergency transitional shelter. And that is, again, having volunteers there to serve lunch, to serve an early dinner, and interact with our clients, provide services. A lot of times they'll come down and say, I need a pair of socks. I need to get a hold of my case manager, and being that liaison and, making them feel at home until they find their home. We also, at our Summit Service Center, are always looking for people to work at our front desk, because our Summit Service Center, and this is important too for us, is now on 766 West 63rd in Summit, and that is our intake area. That's where we're asking people to go Monday through Friday from noon to 4. So if you are at risk of becoming homeless, if you are homeless, or you're in need of services, that is our intake area. So we need people at that front desk to greet people, to interact with clients, and just to help with donations and sort donations and give them out to clients and people who come in who find themselves struggling.
Sounds like there's a lot of opportunities there for people to get involved, especially as we consider the holiday season that we're in, and so many people prefer to give of their time and as opposed to financially. So it sounds like those needs are there. But also speaking financially, how is it that Beds Plus is supported financially?
We are supported through we have incredible grant writers, so we do a lot of grant writing, and we are funded, of course, because there is this great influx of funding right now through Cook County, through the state, and through federal funding. And of course we have to apply for those, but a lot of times there's a match that's needed. So while we may have our domestic violence program, we just got a huge grant for that. and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But that domestic violence program, while we get some funding for it, we have to match it, a percentage of it. So we do a lot of fundraising through events, through our annual appeals that is going on right now, and other ways you can donate just financially to us to meet those needs. And also there are a lot of things that aren't covered in those expenses. It's those everyday basic needs. We have a program that's called our Transition Age Youth Program, and it serves 18 to 24-year-old people, either aging out of the foster care program, people raised in poverty, young families, a lot of single moms, and a lot of things aren't covered with those programs, so we have to raise money for that. It could be things like, what you and I would go out and run to the store, like Tylenol for your kids, paper towels, toilet paper, school uniforms, just basic needs that aren't covered, that might not be covered by these programs, that we want to still make sure that the quality of life is there for some of these families getting back on their feet. And then other ways to go is just come to some of our events as well, our fundraising events as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you shared, because I think there is a misconception out there that so much of this is all state funded or federally funded. However, those funding is often tied to a matching grant or matching funding from the community as well, which is, I know, a challenge in some situations. So I'm glad to hear that that's something that's out there, and maybe an opportunity for people to get involved during this holiday season as well. You mentioned the domestic abuse situation and how you see a number of clients come through who are escaping an abusive situation. Ooh, you have some information about that. Why don't you share?
Sure. We do partner with Pillars for a lot of that, and groups like Constance Morris House, but we find often that people won't go to those safe houses because it's a 90-day limitation, but beds is that next answer. We're that answer for the housing element of it, but a lot of times people do come to us straight through the shelter because they're fleeing a domestic violence situation, and we find them through the shelter program, and then we marry them with resources and services as well. And then we also find that police stations, many people will contact us right through a police station if they know about us and our services. So even that one program I talked about, the domestic violence program, like I have to match 25% of that grant. That's my job. I get to go out and raise that money as well. But if people are interested, there is a hotline number, and I believe it's I'm not going to say it right, but if we want to just share it up here, I can share it with you guys later. There is a hotline if someone is struggling or with domestic violence, to go out and reach out to them, and they can get tied up with services immediately.
That's fantastic, especially during this time and day and age. It's great to know that those resources exist. Yeah. So another question that I have is, because when I first came to Palos Heights, our congregation was very much involved with PADS. And I know that since then PADS has kind of adopted a certain area and territory, and Beds Plus has adopted another certain area and territory. Can you share a little bit about how that came about?
Sure, absolutely. A few years ago, the PADS program was in the southwest area. I would say south area, like from Palos to Oak Lawn, Orland, Clear Ridge kind of area. And there were a group of churches that approached us and were interested in us in being part of our organization as we're further west. And we were thrilled to do that. And PADS now is still around, but they are, I think of them as in DuPage County, where we're kind of the Cook County, South Cook County, and they're DuPage. And we were thrilled to work with these churches and get on board and, expand our services. And that's also been, positive for the community as well on both ends, because now we are, able to expand our services in what we do, and it helps us with funding as well. It helps us absorb more funding, but it also helps us to reach more people.
Yeah, it's also nice with kind of some type of boundary lines to know exactly where to send people, as opposed to the overlap where, there's some resources that are being doubled up on in certain areas and could be used for in a better manner. So that's fantastic.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And when we work with part of the Alliance to End Homelessness, so all of those groups like PADS and ourselves, many other groups that are in this area work together and meet regularly and talk about trends and what's happening, and kind of put our brains together to keep things going. But one thing I didn't mention about volunteering is, and I can't believe I forgot this, is a big part of what we do is providing food as well, our meal teams. So while we also have meals at the transitional motel-based shelters, and while we have it at this new location, we also have meals at Summit. We have them we also provide food boxes that go out. So I think it was like 13,000 pounds of food are distributed just for food rescue programs alone. And that's the things that may come from organizations that like restaurants or places like Trader Joe's. And we are able to give more nutritious food because if you're on limited funds, sometimes you get fillers. So we're trying to help people who are food insecure with that as well. But part of that thing that helps people, there's just a whole other mental health aspect to having food. And those meal teams that provide food daily are just crucial to what we do at the shelters, at the Summit Service Center, and to our families at home too as well.
That's wonderful. So lots of ways to get involved.
Yep.
Kind of continuing on that, if somebody wanted to get involved as a volunteer, or if somebody needed the services or felt that maybe Beds Plus would be a useful tool for themselves or for someone they know or love or care about, how could they follow up? How could they contact you, and what would be the first step for them? Well,
the first step is our entry point if someone is struggling is to call our phone number 708-354-0858, and they will connect you to our intake in our Summit Service Center. But most importantly, if they can go in person, that Monday through Saturday at the Summit Service Center at 766 West 63rd Street. They're open noon to 4. That's for anyone struggling or at risk of struggling with housing insecurity. And then if they want to get involved, they can go to our website. It's www.beds-plus.org. And at that site, you'll see there's ways to donate, ways to help. Just click on those buttons and it shows you how to volunteer in 3 easy steps, as well as, donating financially during these giving times. We're always looking to help those programs if you can't commit your time. And there's even ways to do in-kind gifts. Like right now, we are always looking for those winter coats, which we really need right now, men's sweatpants, women's leggings, hats and gloves. If you want to do a collection or drive at your school, if you have an organization like a scout troop or a youth group that's interested in doing a drive, those things are always impactful. Laundry kits. It's a 2 laundry pods and a Ziploc with some quarters and a dryer sheet. Because many people who are homeless are living in 1 to 2 outfits and just need access to clean those 2 outfits if they're out walking around. So there's a lot of ways to help, and a lot of that is on our website. And those in-kind donations account for over 20% of our donations that we receive every year. So that's those food, it's laundry supplies, it's clothing, it's things that people donate to help keep our clients with the basic needs.
That's fantastic. Sounds like there's lots of ways that require you being there, but also things that you can do at home then provide for those that are struggling or in need.
Yeah, because a lot of us have very busy lives, so there's other ways to do that as well. And some of the other things, just the impact and how many people we're serving. We're over 2,400 individuals that we've helped in over 1,300 households. 834 children are in those households. And over 430 individuals were fleeing domestic situations. And that was our fiscal year last year. So that's just a minimum of the people that we have helped. And we find that since COVID, our numbers have doubled and tripled. And with that housing crisis, we don't see that ebbing anytime soon. We think it's just going to keep going up And that is part of our struggle as well, is finding that affordable housing for people.
Yeah, the need is certainly there. And thank you, and thank Beds Plus for providing that service in our community, a service that oftentimes gets unnoticed or is not even realized that it's there, but is most certainly necessary given the profound impact that you all are having. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, for considering getting involved, and for being part of this month's Community Bridge. Until next time, God bless.